Russell Wilson is a New York Giant. Welcome back to the Empire State Sports Report podcast. My name is Adrianna. I'm your host. And today we are talking about Russell Wilson because the Giants went from having basically no quarterbacks, only Tommy DeVito, to having Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson as their quarterbacks within 5 days. And the W last names, I'm probably going to screw up a lot. So just bear with me. I'm going to try and make sure that I can get it. I'm like, what if we add Cam Ward to the mix? We just have W's on W's. And it would be great for merch, let me tell you. So, all right, let's talk about Russ Wilson. So it's funny because I got an email from the Giants today. And listen, I know that we all know that Russ Wilson won a Super Bowl and obviously has a lot of really good experience in the NFL, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but I didn't realize he was a 10-time Pro Bowler. So I know that Russ Wilson is not the same Russ Wilson that the Giants are getting now, but it is an upgrade over Daniel Jones. So I talked about this on another show that I think at this point, when you look at the quarterback room now versus what it was at this time last year, it's obviously better. Not amazing by any means, but I would say last year's quarterback room was probably, like, if I had to grade it going into the season, I don't know, like a D+, a D maybe. You guys tell me if you feel differently. I know a lot of you will probably say it's an F, but I feel like this quarterback room is like a C+, because there's a lot of experience. You've got guys who can read defenses, who can make changes at the line of scrimmage, who have way more experience than Jones, but also the experience is just, you witness it in their game, where I feel like a lot of the times with Jones, like I kind of felt like he was not, maybe like it looked like he wasn't prepared or just he didn't feel comfortable back there. And I think that between these two quarterbacks, between Wilson and Winston, we're going to feel like those guys are prepared. They're ready to go. They know the offense. And again, they can make changes when necessary. And they can throw the ball down the field. And, they're not like wildly afraid to get sacked, I don't think. So, I feel better about the quarterback room. It's not perfect by any means. And it's not the best quarterback room in the NFL by any means. But I do just feel like it's better than where we were at this point last year. And we still have the draft. So we do still have the opportunity to elevate this quarterback room one step further. So, I feel optimistic about Russ. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I don't think, regardless of who the quarterback is, I don't think this team is winning 10 games. So I feel better that Russ Wilson is on this team because I feel like, Darius Slayton and Malik Neighbors are going to have a hell of a year between Wilson and Winston. So I'm excited about that. I think they're going to have really good numbers. I just think, like all of the memes have shown, that it's probably not going to translate to wins. And I don't think that has anything to do with the fact that, I think the defense is going to suck and they're going to give up 50 points a game. And, the offense is never going to score. I just think with this team, until I see it in a game and see that they are a competent, disciplined football team, I just don't believe that they're going to win games, especially when you look at the schedule. So it is the NFL and anything can happen. Like if we're playing Patrick Mahomes in the 1 week that he's injured and, Travis Kelce's injured, yes, there's a chance that the Giants can maybe keep that game close or maybe win it. But we could also have Andrew Thomas down at that point, and then our season is essentially over. So, that's how it goes. I also do think, I feel like a little bit better that the Giants have brought in 2 tackles who are going to be swing tackle options. So if God forbid Andrew Thomas goes down again, at least we're not forcing a guard to try and play tackle for the day. So there's a little bit of optimism there from my standpoint. I would like an added layer of protection there. So what I would do is still bring in Tyree Phillips and I would re-sign him because I just think, or maybe they're going to go after a tackle in the draft. I think that that's okay too. But I think moving Azudu and Neal to guard, I hope to God that it works out for them there. That would be best case scenario for all of us, is that our draft picks are actually functional and can play well when they get in the game. Wouldn't that be nice? We saw some of that last year. So I hope that that continues with these guys. And I really hope that that continues with this draft class too. Obviously, because we don't know what's going to happen with the draft, and there's still so much time even before the draft and then after the draft before we actually see these players get on the field and play and hopefully play well. I feel like this draft can really make or break this football season. And, I was talking to someone about that earlier today, is that, there's 8 draft picks this year. They can get a quarterback. They can get a quarterback later. They have the opportunity to get the best player available in the draft at 3, which could either be Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter if both quarterbacks are gone, which is looking more and more likely by the day. So, I think that there's cause for optimism. And I want to talk a little bit about what Russ Wilson said in his presser too, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I do think that there is some cause for optimism. Like I said, don't think the team is going to be amazing this year. I do think they're going to be more fun to watch. And I do think that we're going to see shots taken down the field. I think that we're going to see Malik Neighbors make some amazing catches. I think that Darius Slayton is going to get what he needs to get. He needs over, I think, 750 yards to be in the top 5 Giants wide receivers of all time. So, I think there's things like that we can be excited about. And then, of course, how this draft comes into play and how they perform. Like last year, I think if we had a different quarterback, if we had a better quarterback situation, the way that the veterans played before Andrew Thomas went down, the way that the rookies really stepped up and played well. I mean, we lost a lot of kind of close games. Like they were, I think, determined by 7 points or less. So when you're only averaging 10 points a game, it's hard to win. But the fact that the rookies contributed so heavily did make a difference. And, when Tyler Nubin and Drew Phillips were out, you felt the difference on the field. So I really feel like this draft class is going to have the opportunity to make an impact from day one, regardless of who they pick, right? Like if they get Hunter, Sanders, or Carter at 3, I mean, Sanders is probably not making an impact day one, but there's a chance that he could play at some point. And the other 2 guys are likely starting day one. So, between that, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, whoever else they bring in during the draft really is going to have the opportunity to make plays on this football team. And, at this point, that's what I want to see. I want to see, ball hawks like Adebo and Holland get interceptions. I want to see the offensive line play continually well and block for Russ. I want to see Jalen Hyatt get involved. So let's talk about Russ Wilson because he specifically mentioned Jalen Hyatt. And I was like, okay, I like this. So Russ Wilson, actually, his press conference made me excited and optimistic. I still feel the way that I feel, that I don't think this team is going to win 10 games. They might not even get anywhere close to that. And honestly, that's my expectation. If they exceed it, God bless. We are in good hands. But where I'm at now, my expectations are low. And when they start to play good football, they will increase. But I do feel like, Russ speaking so highly of Brian Daboll. And listen, I know that he's a good press conference guy. I know that at this point in his career, he knows what to say to the media, but he did have the opportunity to go to other teams and he picked the Giants. And, he really said that he has a lot of respect for Brian Daboll and, he has a history with some of the coaches on the Giants. Like he knows Shea Tierney going back to college and, he respects Daboll and the work that he's done. And he's come from a Super Bowl winning football team and all of these positive things about Daboll as a coach, obviously winning coach of the year and things like that made me as a fan who's never been in the building, who has criticized Brian Daboll a lot, which I stand by, has made me feel like, okay, maybe I should give Daboll the benefit of the doubt going into the season. You've got a guy who's been in the league for 14 years, who has had coaches like Mike Tomlin and Pete Carroll, some of the best coaches in the NFL. And he had the opportunity to go to Kevin Stefanski and the Browns with Myles Garrett and, probably Shedeur Sanders to work with, among other players. Like he had the opportunity to go there and maybe he had meetings with other teams too. I think there's one that I'm just not forgetting right now, or I'm not remembering, but he had the opportunity to do all that and he chose Brian Daboll. And you can say, oh, New York was a big part of that. I'm sure. But look, like he said, these guys play football to win, which is why when all of us gripe about the fact that they beat the Colts, blah, 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 like I think most of us say that. The way that I see it is I say that out of frustration because they played shit football for 10 weeks in a row. And then all of a sudden it's like a light bulb went off and they remembered how to play football. I know that players don't tank, okay? Did they give up after Jones got benched? Yes, but they turned it around. So I don't expect them to say, we're going to sit around and wait for Arch Manning, so we're going to tank this year. No, I expect them to work hard and play good football. But like I said, when you played shitty football for 10 weeks in a row, what happened to the 11th week? All of a sudden, you guys are good at football. Like, it just, you know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, that is irrelevant to what we're talking about. The point is that Russ is excited to be a Giant for a multitude of reasons. I'm sure being in New York sounds a lot better than being in Cleveland, but he really name dropped. I thought this was very interesting too, is that he mentioned probably 10 different players between the offense and defense that he's already spoken with and that he's excited to play with. He said he talked to Brian Burns before he met with the Giants. He said he talked to Malik Neighbors. He's watched film of Malik Neighbors. He specifically mentioned to play during the Commanders game and how Theo Johnson had a really nice block. And he's talked about how he texted Jalen Hyatt and said, we got to get you more involved. I'm excited to get you the ball this year. I mean, he also mentioned Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson and, of course, Malik Neighbors. But I'm like, the fact that he went out of his way to specifically say, to A, reach out to Hyatt, and then B, specifically say, Hyatt is a guy that I want to get involved with. I was like, well, Jalen Hyatt resurgence. Let's go. This is his year. And I hope it is. You guys know, if you've been here for a while, I was really high on Jalen Hyatt. I'm still just disappointed that we don't see him at all. Maybe Russ Wilson is going to change that. Maybe. Like I said, low expectations this year, but you never know. But with that being said, the way that he spoke so highly of the organization and the players, and that he wanted to come here because of Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, and he talked about Holland being an asset to this defense, it just made me feel like maybe there are a couple reasons to not go into this season thinking that it's going to be as bad or worse than last year, which, to be honest, I don't really think that it could get worse than last year. 3 wins is pretty awful. So I do think this year, the line is 4.5, so maybe they'll win 5. I don't know. But I do think that at least we're going to be watching more exciting football. That is what I'm hanging my hat on, that I believe that this offense, in theory, can score more than 10 points a game. Now, again, it depends on what they do in the draft. If they bring in Hunter, he's going to get some snaps at wide receiver. So you think for Russ Wilson, you've got now, okay, Jalen Hyatt, sure. But you've got Malik Neighbors, Travis Hunter, Wan'Dale Robinson, Theo Johnson, Bellinger. He talked about Chris Manhertz, who he used to play with. So, I just, I don't know. Am I crazy that I'm a little bit excited? Like I said, I don't think we're going to win a lot of games. I'm not that crazy. But I do think that maybe the team will be a little more fun to watch. At the very least, we have Jameis Winston post games, and that's what I look forward to. And the way that I see it is this year is an in-between year for the Giants team. Unfortunately, again, it just is what it is. I think that this is going to be a building year to get us to a quarterback. So if Russ Wilson has a tough first 4 games, then you put Jameis Winston in there and you see what Jameis Winston can do. And if he throws 7 interceptions and 3 touchdowns, then, well, we all expected that, did we not? But I assume in there's going to be a couple Malik Neighbors touchdowns and, Theo Johnson long drives down the field. So I don't know. I don't want to be so disappointed. It's only March. I want to be a little excited that maybe there's something to look forward to. And I really think that the draft is also going to help build off of this. I think that Joe Schoen has done a nice job in free agency. He was telling the truth when he said that he was basically not going to pull a Dave Gettleman and get into some wildly expensive, crazy contracts. So I appreciate that about him. I also like that he did 2 and 3 year deals. A lot of them are, 1 year or 2 year or 3 year as the max. So I like that. And they all were really affordable deals. I think, there was a little bit of complaint about the Adebo deal that he was getting $15 million a year. But that's par for the course for a good corner. And if he comes in here and he's cornerback 1 and he wildly outplays Tay Banks, are we not all going to be happy about that? It's not our money. $15 million. It is what it is. That's the going rate for a good corner these days. I looked at all of the other corners when he signed his deal and he was right in the middle, basically. Not in the middle. He was in the top, right below the top tier of quarterbacks. So anyway, I might have done the math wrong. I think it's him 18 million and Holland 15. I think. Anyway, either way, I think those were guys that I think will be good investments. And, I feel good about the quarterback situation. I feel better about it than I did last year. So let's talk for a second about what we think is going to happen in the draft at 3, because there's so much speculation, and I think people either feel like on one side or the other side. And one side is, well, we have Russ, we have Jameis, we have Tommy DeVito. We're not getting a quarterback in the draft. Good, they can go best player available. And I think the other people feel like, well, Tommy DeVito's the third string. He easily could be battling it out with Shedeur Sanders at 3. If he's there, I don't think they're going to pass on him because they still need a franchise quarterback. I am somewhere in between. I feel like the reason why they signed 2 veteran quarterbacks is because they don't think they're getting Sanders at 3. I think that they are fully prepared that the quarterbacks are going 1 and 2, and at 3, they are not going to have the option to get a quarterback, and they are not dumb enough, we hope, to pick Jackson Dart at 3. So they're going to go either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, and then they'll get a quarterback later. That is my personal thinking. I really think that that's why they brought in 2 veterans. Jameis Winston's contract also is pretty cheap. Also, Tommy DeVito's the third string and is also very cheap. So he could be a practice squad guy. Like, I don't think there's anything preventing them from getting a quarterback if at 3, if one is there. But every day I see more reports. Cam Ward had an amazing pro day. Cam Ward is doing a private training in Tennessee. Cam Ward is doing a private training with the Browns. Shedeur Sanders mentioned the Browns and whatever team his son is going to go to. And the Browns are interested in Shedeur too. So I am feeling like the Giants aren't getting a quarterback at 3. So they wanted to protect themselves and say, we've got 2 veterans who know what they're doing, who could learn this offense, who could potentially win us some games. And that's what we're going to go with. And if Shedeur falls to us at 3, then we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Now, I do think that if Shedeur falls to them at 3, I think that they will pick him. And I think that they will go defensive lineman or whatever later. But we don't really know. This is the beauty and the frustration of this time of year is we don't really know. Quick water break for those who are listening. So I think that's where we're at. Let's talk. They made a couple other signings. So let's talk about those guys briefly. So number 1, they signed wide receiver Zach Pascal. He has history as a special teamer as well as just being a wide receiver. So he's only a 1-year contract. The way that I look at signings like this is these are camp bodies. So they already signed Amir Smith-Marset. Last year they had Amir Smith-Marset and Gunner. So I think this year I hope that they brought in someone like Pascal so that we're never going to see Eric Gray back again on returns, because if they haven't learned their lesson yet, I mean, someone banged their head against the wall because it's enough at this point. So I think that's the plan for someone like Pascal. They also re-signed linebacker Deontay Johnson, who, if you were at camp last year and remember, he was a guy that looked great during camp. He really stood out and was a guy that a lot of us were excited about going into the preseason. And then unfortunately, he got injured, I think, in the first game of preseason, which was brutal. And he didn't come back until week 16. So he came back the last couple games, played a few times, and did okay. Not great, not bad. But I like these signings because they're 1-year deals. They are practice squad bodies, competition. Let's see how these guys do it in preseason and if they can really battle it out. So I like the signings. I'm fine with them. 2 other signings. I think we already talked about Aaron Stinney, but now it's official that they did re-sign Aaron Stinney and they re-signed Greg Van Roten, which I'm fine with. They are, I think both of them are only 1 or 2 year deals. And I like it. I like Greg Van Roten because we're going to finally have the same offensive line week 1 as we did last year, week 1. So love that for some continuity. Carmen Brasillo is back. Great news all around for the offensive line. I like that. And I like Aaron Stinney because he has experience at center and both guard positions. So he's another one that between Neal and Izudu, now you've got 3 potential options for guards if, God forbid, John Runyon or GVR goes down. So again, options. I also think that they're probably going to get either a guard or a tackle, possibly both in the draft. So I do think there's more coming. So the amount of DMs and comments that I get on a regular basis of people being like, our offensive line completely sucks. I'm like, it's the same offensive line as last year. And as Jermaine and Luminor will tell you, before Andrew Thomas went down, the offensive line was not that bad. The problem is when Andrew Thomas goes down, which is why they brought in 2 tackles. But like I said, sign Tyree Phillips, bring in a swing tackle in the draft. We need a little bit more help from a depth position with the line because it's never enough, as we all have learned. The last signing that they made is little Jordan Humphrey. He is a wide receiver. I believe he goes by LJ. He's 6'4", 225. He's been in the NFL for 7 years. So like Pascal has also been in the league for, I think, 6 or 7 years. So a lot of them have a lot of experience. The only difference is that Humphrey has not played special teams. So he is more of just a wide receiver type. So to me, like I said, I like these extra signings, bring them in at camp. Let's see what they can do. It's kind of like what Cole Beasley, I think, was maybe going to be for the Giants. And then obviously it didn't work out with him and injuries, but we all know how injuries affect this team. So the more the merrier at all positions, which is the same thing with Deontay Johnson, same thing with these offensive linemen and, wide receivers across the board. So I am sure that over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see a few more of these smaller 1-year contract type of signings. Again, just mostly for depth. And I think what I like about this time of year too, from now basically until training camp, is that the roster is going to change a lot. And there's going to be more people who are brought in, more players in all sorts of different positions. So I like that they are always striving to improve, as they should be. And I just hope that whatever they are doing with the medical staff is that they figured out how to prevent injuries, because that's really the most important thing at this point. But that's it, you guys, for this episode. I am off to finish watching the Yankee game. It's opening day. Go Yanks, steal your base. This shirt also, by the way, for those of you who are watching, love it so much. It's from a company called Liquid Blue T-shirts. I don't know how I found them, but I bought the shirt last year and I love it. So check them out. Anyway, I'll be back next week to talk more things Giants. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, share with a friend, and enjoy the rest of your week.